Okay, so see how this goes. Morning, Dota. Hope you're well. Castle Labs has been super funky about what it shows. Okay, there we go. Custom dashboard. Why is Castle Labs not? Please don't be one of them streams where everything goes kind of wonky. The Caster Labs plugin is not connecting to Twitch. That's the problem. Restart that one. If I have to, I'd rather have YouTube to the side and put the prompter in Twitch mode. No, it's not connected to Twitch. Awesome. Not the way to start a stream. Chat beta. Just when you think everything's working fine. So it looks like Twitch chat. They've either changed it or something's not available because the prompter won't display it, and the app that I was using won't display it. But it works in the Twitch dashboard just fine. Not surprisingly. Come on. I dislike starting a stream with challenges that are beyond my control. It's irritating because the things you can't test beforehand. Well, I suppose that's a bit of a lie. I could test Twitch chat beforehand, but yeah, Twitch is not working for the third party stuff. Oh well, I guess I'm having a YouTube chat up on the prompter and Twitch chat up to my right. We'll do it that way today. There we go. Okay. My apologies for that, like messing around for the first chunk of the stream. I had dog issues to take care of just as the time ran out on the the pre-roll on the ads. I've moved the ads to be 3 minutes at the beginning, so I'm trying to start the stream so that it at least starts by 7 a.m. That's not always happening, so we'll see how this goes. Always trying to learn new things about streaming. Okay, so what am I doing today? Well, yesterday, close that down. Yesterday, I actually got the signalStore working for my planning items. So now to do the add, to do the query, etc. Now it's just, store.planning_items.add, right? Or store.add planning item, right? And then the actual store, right? I kind of moved into this structure. The store, I actually can build off of the features. So I can actually build a different store if I wanted to, using a different set of features. But this means that I can kind of break down the query features from the write features and kind of organize the code in quite a nice way overall, considering what it is. And then you kind of just combine those features into your signalStore, and there we go. So the query side, we go for GraphQL. We set the state as loading. Then we go and get from the service. We go and fetch all the planning items, and then we output them as our planning items. So we modify the state of the signalStore. Similarly, when we write something, we modify the state, add the planning item in there, and then go and add that planning item and then update its identifier when that's saved. So we modify the backend to return an identifier whenever we create something. So, or whenever we create a planning item right now, which means that we can just swap that in. So now if we were to stay in the screen, we can still update that item. Even if it hasn't made it all the way through the system, we've saved enough of it to be able to change it because we've got the data on the client side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work on users because I think this is going to be a little bit more complicated. If only because I need to remember to do my. I definitely notice the difference between people coming in the stream when I advertise versus when I don't. Even though people know I only advertise in 2 Discords. So the purpose of today's stream is to get users in there, so that when I go and add a, let me start. I could just start the GraphQL part up. The beauty of having the view database versus the users by tenant spec. User like tenant identifier. We need the claims principal injected. Claims principal user. Let's at least fill this out before we create tenant identifier. List async. Oh, we need to modify that to be user view model. That's why. Okay, so if we just start up GraphQL. So does this still work then? Just create a new mailbox when it's gone for a while. No? There's the mailbox. Come on. You can do it. Either way. I can sign in. We go to planning and it's loading, it's loading, it's loading, it's loading, it's loading. Is that stuck? No, should be fine. Don't do this to me today. Oh, there you go. It errored. Oh. Oh, my machine restarted. Docker's unavailable. But I had browsers open. I was in code. I was running the application. How did it? So Docker had to just end itself. Huh. Yeah, everything stopped. Restart to update. Might as well do that now. Get it out of the way, right? I mean, it's a day that ends with Y. There's a Docker update. I don't know why that wasn't working. So that was just timing out. Okay. So again, the questions I kind of want to answer today is, okay, well, now I have users, right? And I have my planning item store. I create a user store. That's not a problem. And I can create a GraphQL query and do all those sorts of fun things on that one. But now, what is the right way of storing the information on the in the client side to make sure that, you know, I can display things properly, and also, you know, if I navigate back and forth, I can pull things. Do I join between stores, or do I copy data, the necessary data, into my client store, knowing that I won't necessarily get that data back, or maybe I can with the query? So, yeah, a few questions. I need to close that one down. That one goes away. Okay, so the cd cd dev docker. CLS. When you navigate between all the different things, you're like, I need to, whatever. What do I want here? I want to go into Liquid Sky. Yeah. And then I'm going to do services up. And I want to do SQL Server, Kafka, console. What? Oh. Dev, Docker. I wasn't where I thought I was. CD Liquid Sky. And then services up, SQL Server, Kafka, console. That's going to have an issue. It needs to restart. I need to address the starting order of some of those things. I don't know why the broker refuses to start. SQL Server, console. I don't need Rabbit. I don't need Couchbase. I need. Forget will be useful at some point. Okay, so now let's start that up again and see what happens. And that's just down. Okay. Okay, so there's our planning items loading in. Okay, so that's up and running now. So our planning items, this is the state that I'm rendering here, the planning items and the loading state. So I'm not going to worry too much about the display right this second. I did have a display working, but I wasn't quite confident in it. And really the focus is not necessarily the display, it's more the behavior that I'm kind of concerned with right this second. So what I'm trying to do is set up a future path for design. So I need to answer some questions. And one of those questions is, what happens when I have related data? So in my add planning item, there's a thing that I'm missing, which is the ability to assign a user to the planning item, right? So first things first, let's go and modify the server. This is going to be the users for this tenant. So what we're going to do is query dot. So let's see, do we have we do not. So public virtual iCollection of tenant users, right? So this is a navigable option on tenant user equals null. And tenant user has the tenant, right? So over here we can do include u goes to u dot tenant users dot u goes to u dot tenant users dot any tu goes to tu dot tenant dot identifier equals tenant identifier dot select u goes to new user view model ID. An ID here is not actually going to be That's going to be good. So I'm going to slightly, for the purpose of the client, I'm going to slightly break with my ID versus identifier nomenclature. Email equals u.email. What don't you like about that? Why don't you like that? It's not giving me the U there. What don't you like? That's exactly what I did in the other one. Oh, I had to break it out. Okay. Okay. So user view model. That's easily fixed. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't actually need the internal IDs once I start using identifier everywhere on the client side. But I will reflect back over whether I want to refer to these as identifiers again on the client side later. But from an API perspective, making them ID and obscuring the fact that they are different than the ID of than the primary key of the table doesn't really benefit me. So I will review that and keep reviewing that as well. I want to just test something, see if it's no. Okay, so now we have that. Let's restart that. And then we can do new document, get users for tenant. We do need our token. Let's go and grab that. Make sure I refresh the token. I really wish there was a better way of doing this. So this is query users for tenant. So need to refresh the schema. Yeah. Users name, email. There we go. Okay. ID. We don't need commas there. So there's the available users. Now, again, because of the way that the system's working right now, it's a little bit of a challenge. So we should be able to. I don't think I've done this in a while. Let's see. Verify user test management. Let's see if this works. No, it won't work because I've got no API there because I've not started it up. We need to start everything. So I do have the ability to add another user. But the question is whether it's because I haven't tested it in a while because I haven't again, I'm trying to build out all the pieces, right? Has that part been neglected by other changes? And also, I do need to run the unit test because I think I broke something yesterday with the unit testing. And I did a push of this branch and it failed. $200 okay, that's good to see. And there we go, there's the user. So it got into Kafka. So it got that far. So then do we... No. Did it get to the view database is the question. Users. Oh, there you go. It is there now. It's not there though. It's not. Well, the tenant's there, but... So the user's there. But the tenant user record didn't make it. So let's have a look and see if that we published it or... Yeah, name Matthew. Tenant user was registered notification. So is that just being slow? Or is that service not up and running? So that user is 3322. Or rather 2002. 2002 never got there. So let's have a look at the consumer. Certainty users. Select top from tenant users. So something went wrong with that one. It never inserted the tenant. It got the tenant user because it did the query on it. And again, I publish an identifier with that. So that should work. Mr. Jones, good day. How are you doing? For some reason, the software that I use for the prompter is not connected to Twitch today. And the prompter's not connected to Twitch either, so... He thinks Twitch is having issues. So... Oh, but Twitch is finally showing me as green on the bitrate, which is nice. That's finally changed to green. It's been red for the last 3 days. Yeah. Okay, so we have the user made it, but the so I'm going to add another user. Let's go to view consumers, receivers, tenant user receiver. So let's have a look and see. My bet here is because initially I swapped some of these things around and I caused an issue for myself. I wonder if I've done something similar. Let's go and create Helen. Be Helen. You can still be potato layer. So there's Helen. Eventually we should get here. We should hit this breakpoint. Might take a second or two. Oh, you know, I could be waiting forever. Offsets, tenant users. offset 3 end 4 lag 1. So it does know there's a message to process. View consumers. So do we get Helen in the users? Yeah, we got Helen in the users. So it inserted this user, and it knows there's a record to process, but it has yet to do it. Why? As long as that offset doesn't change. So it knows there's a lag on tenant users. Is Kafka... Has Kafka gone funny? No. Kafka has not gone funny. I know what I could do to get it to work. I just don't want to do it because it's not what I should have to do, right? But for the purpose of debugging this, I'm going to have to do it. Okay, so internal running consumers. Going to restart that consumer, and it'll pick up that message. It can take a second. It doesn't always happen immediately, but that's why I'm giving it time. But I don't know why this would be slow, particularly. Debugging these things is not something I want to be messing around with right this second either. Because in general, this stuff, once it works, it works. There we go. Okay, so I'm passing in a tenant identifier, user identifier, name identifier. Okay, so identifier, tenant identifier, 8B to F, right? That's that tenant, 8B2F, and deflux number 3 is on tenant 2, which is tenant 2, which is that tenant. Okay, so we definitely have 2 users there. So let's go into here. Get that. Okay, so 5. So now existing. So we do not have an existing tenant. We acquire. Oh. I do not have an active live stream on YouTube. I would beg to differ. I mean, absolutely 0 viewers, but still a quiet day. Okay, so this is okay. So that's why. It processed it. That's not good. Set to start. Yeah, give that a second anyway. Okay, so I did make a change yesterday to this, and I used a semaphore. Because the challenge is if I have a tenant user coming in and a user being registered at the same time, that's why. That's why. If I have a user and a tenant user record coming in at the same time, they both need to acquire the user to make sure the user's intact, right? They both have a user identifier, so they both go and say, "Hey, does this user exist?" Well, the problem was happening in that I was creating two records, right? Because both of them were hitting at the same time. They were both determining there was no user and creating two versions of the same object, right? So I was seeing that behavior. This way, with a semaphore, the first one in, and this is very unlikely to be beaten. Semaphores are meant for async stuff, whereas locks are kind of not. So this will allow a certain number through. So I can rate limit essentially what comes through. So here I'm saying, hey, maximum of one, right? So only one request can come in and work. So the others will block here until the semaphore is clear. But what's happening is the second one comes in and never releases the semaphore. So then when I come into this again, the semaphore's blocking. So that user did this, but the second one never releases the semaphore, vice versa. So that's what I suspect is happening. Although now I'm talking it through, I'm a little less convinced, but we'll see. So if we go to application here, acquiring entities, let's do the set. We do need to do it. There's no doubt about needing to do it. It's just I need to make sure that it's happening for the right reasons. So if we refresh and reset this to the start. And there's no harm in letting it reprocess all the messages, because again, I should be building my system in an idempotent way so that every request is just, oh, it doesn't, I don't need to worry about it, right? So it should know that it's processed this, or rather, it should test its state and know that it doesn't need to do anything. So let's start that up again. Let's see if it consumes that record now. And this should work fine, in theory. Nope. First one processed, second one blocked. So my semaphore stuff is not working correctly. Using semaphore. Right. Semaphore wait, semaphore release. Is that a better pattern? I don't know, but I think we're going to try doing it that way. So here's where I think it's failing every time, right? So the suggested pattern seems to be that. Finally always executes. I think he guaranteed execution of finally. no matter what happens. So that's why that's put in there. Acquire tenant. Let's do the same thing there. Try. Don't need that one there now because it will always do the release. So let's see if that pattern works any differently. So we got one. So it's just not processing the second one. So I'm missing something in here. Tenant. It's a static on this class. I'm not overlapping there. I don't think I'm misusing the pattern. No. One. Oh, I misunderstand what. I thought that meant the number that's in there, not the number that's starting to be allowed. That might be why. So let's go back here. I'm going to reset this once more because obviously we got two that need to be down for a second or two. Come on. So all I'm doing here is I'm resetting the tenant, resetting the partition, the pointer really to the partition to say, hey, you're going to start from, this is your offset, right? So that this consumer group, that's its offset. So now it'll process up to that offset. Because this is set to always start at the earliest, right? It will always start the first. You can set Kafka into a few modes. So if you want to make sure that a consumer group is not processing messages in the past because maybe the schema changed or whatever, then you can set it to current or latest rather. And then when it starts, it won't process anything. It won't process anything in the topic now, but as messages come in, it'll process. You can also set it to be earliest, which means it'll go back to the first. It'll track its offset and it'll go back to that first one. So let's see if this changes any behavior now. I'm not hopeful this will. Well, I'm hopeful it will. I'm just not confident it will do what I think it's going to do. Oh, it did it. I was wrong. Okay, so the problem was it was releasing at the wrong time. So, okay. Or it wasn't releasing, that's the problem. It was not releasing the semaphore. Because it wasn't actually gaining the semaphore, it was blocked because it was not allowed one. So the first one that came in got blocked, and then everything else just backed up behind it because it wasn't allowed to do anything. Although interesting. Things you learn. But yeah, the semaphore is way easier to read than a lock. I just don't like try finalies, but I think it's a cleaner pattern overall, and making sure that it always releases it is the most important thing there. rather than my delicate sensitivity is about the nesting. So I should be able to get 3 users. There you go. Okay. We move forward. Okay, so on the client side now, that's interesting. On the client side now, we are in need of potentially a different store. Have you created backend where you show analytics like monthly active users, something like that? Hi, Morvi. How you doing? I have in the past. This backend is set for that though. So the way this is designed, I'm aiming to put what's a fine backend. You triggered my innuendo. It's a deep dark rabbit hole. Yeah. I think you know my sense of humor well enough to know that I could actually I could follow along with that quite happily. This backend has something like this. So it doesn't right now. But the design of it is very much intended for that. And I have been playing with open telemetry. So I do have the benefit of using Auth0. So Auth0 will tell me the number of logins, the number of different users I'm using every month, right? I can actually use that feature as well. But actual active users in the system, what I intend to do in this is, because the way the application works is I intend to kind of put telemetry around the commands. So I'm tracking the number of requests, the number of actions done, different types of actions done. So I can kind of hotspot my application as well in terms of I can say, hey, this handler was called X number of times, and this one was barely ever called. So the usage patterns of the system should expose themselves. So open telemetry is something that I will be layering into this. I'm just trying to not bring the stream down with that. The actions you store in Redis or MySQL database. So those would actually store in different things, right? So right now I have what's it called? Let me have a look. Good morning, Apex, by the way. I don't think I said it. Good morning. Jump straight into that. So I've got the Open Telemetry Collector and then Prometheus, Grafana, and Loki. So they're like NoSQL databases themselves. I don't know what they're backed by, but they're storing that data. So the telemetry data gets exposed from my application, and well, it will do when I hook it in there, and then it will go to the relevant application, because there's 3 different types of things that I'm looking for, right? There's logging, straight up logging, which I don't believe a lot in, right? So I don't put a lot of logging in my application because it has little value right now. Telemetry in terms of the number of requests per second, the number of actions, the weight on any given part of the system. Right, telemetry useful for indicating high usage. So if you're scaling, you can react to telemetry stuff. And then metrics. So how many requests per second am I making on average? You know, what is the heaviest used part of the system? How many users are logged into the system and actively using it? You know, all those sorts of fun things come around. So open telemetry is something that I will be looking to layer into the application. It's inside Docker Compose. With this, if you have more than one server, then how will it work? Like 8 Docker Compose running 8 servers. I'm not sure I quite follow. So every single component of the application so far is kind of scalable independently, right? So the telemetry collector is its own service running. So in my application, I'm connecting to a telemetry collector rather. which then distributes the data. So if there's a lot of requests, these can scale up. I apologize, by the way, ads will start in about 3 minutes and run for 3 minutes. But yeah, I can scale these individual parts. This is just Docker Compose because it's for development, right? I need this for development. And I do have a branch of OpenTelemetry. I just didn't get the information flowing through. And I don't want to necessarily struggle through that on stream. I kind of want to get the right pieces in place so I can best demonstrate, here's my vision, right? Because I want to do, in this instance, right, for development, yeah, but you could have multiple instances of it, but because they're clustered, right? So you can scale that up. So no, there wouldn't only be one instance. I mean, for if when I deliver this application, the usage is going to be pretty low. So yeah, I could get away with one service, but as more requests come in, then I've got to scale those pieces appropriately. I can also use Kafka for this data as well. I can use Kafka to publish all this information through and actually get higher throughput, because that's actually what Kafka's built for. So I can scale that appropriately. But yeah, it's for right now everything's development, so everything's one instance because I'm not this application or OpenTelemetry. I assume you saw RabbitMQ in that list there. I don't know if they can use RabbitMQ as a transport. I would imagine so, because RabbitMQ has a lot of the same features as Kafka. So yeah, it could potentially use that. Ultimately, you're just saying, hey, here's some data, get it away from me as quickly as possible, keep it safe, and transfer it to something else. That's all you really need there, right? So you're not the transport doesn't matter. RabbitMQ can be used as a message queue. I mean, that's what the MQ stands for in message queue. Transfer data through RabbitMQ, then another worker picks it up and saves it to database MySQL, or whatever mechanism you're using, right? So if you're trying to roll your own metrics or your own telemetry, then yeah, you can store it wherever you want to. That's a big focus of my application stack so far, right? My application is built to be distributed. You know, I'm building this deliberately to break out the components and to allow me to be flexible about its design and the things I do. So right now, all this data publishes here, and it goes to this view database. Ultimately, it could go to a reporting database. It will go to a search database, right? So I will add Elasticsearch at some point, and then be able to search this data quicker, right? So, it's all built for that. So I don't have to make any hard decisions. And that's a big advantage of this sort of architecture, right? You can change things because you can just swap out an individual piece of the system and make it work a different way. Whereas in a traditional monolith, you have that ability is less. I need to get my messages working on the stream deck. So here we go. Storing activity into database through RabbitMQ or storing into Redis, does it matter for performance since it's a queue? What do you think? I don't think it matters. I think that ultimately the technology you want, the technology you use to get the data away from your application should be the quickest part, right? It doesn't matter if the performance on the other side is great or not, if you're willing to wait for things, right? So all that matters is your application is not stopped from doing its job for any length of time, and so you shouldn't be blocking on any requests, but you also want to make sure you make the requests. So RabbitMQ, yeah, it's high performance, built for quick throughput, and then the storage doesn't really matter because that processing is offloaded somewhere else, so you can go with less resource on that side. Thank you for the compliment. I beg to differ, but this is something I like doing, right? I've been researching a long time. Your advice will help me. I'm glad it can. That's awesome. That is really rewarding to know. Okay. We'll wait for the ads to finish before I start the next block properly. Fortunately, not everyone gets the benefit of no ads. So, and I don't know who sees them and who doesn't. Apparently, it's very random and depends on your country and all sorts of other information. Okay, so I appreciate it. It's ads are well, that's because you're one of the people who supports, and I appreciate that as well very much. Okay, so yesterday I had a really solid stream. Give me keyboard from Amazon. Yeah, you get right now. You get, because you're a 2 month sub, you get a Super Nintendo controller, or a SNES controller, as I would refer to it as. I've found that North Americans, or US for certain, don't really refer to it as the SNES, but we definitely did in the UK. It's more likely referred to over here as SNES, or just Super Nintendo. Okay, so yesterday we created this signalStore, and this was very cool. Yeah. And what I did after the stream was I broke down it even further, so you can actually compose the signalStore out of signalStore features. The benefit of that is you can actually kind of keep some features back and potentially build different versions of the store based upon what you need. I don't know how solid that is, but we'll learn that as we go. But it does allow me to keep the query separate from the write here, which is nice, because then the logic isn't all bundled into one big file, right? So I can create these signalStore features. So I have a function that returns a feature, and that dictates these methods. And I'm going to come back around on this in a little while to do a specific feature, which is to group that data, right? Because I get the data on the client right now as this, and I want to say, okay, well, items I need to care about the most need to be shown in a certain way, and items I need to care about the least, i.e. the review date is far out, get pushed down. So that's one thing. However, we have another thing to do first, which is a bit of a challenge. So at each step in this, what I'm looking for is to understand more about the right way to do things, or not necessarily the right way, but a way that fits and works for me. I.e., can I keep following this pattern very easily, or am I going to get stuck and struggle later on? So I'm using this planning items screen very much as an experiment on, okay, if I'm going to build my application using this, right, I don't want to use just services everywhere and kind of have disparate calls and put all the logic into my views. I want to have this ability to wrap this behavior up into these stores and have that data flowing through there, and potentially have that data updated in the back end, from the back end, without my client actually knowing, but it just flows in. Yeah, Tailwind. Yeah. So, so what I'm going to work on right now is getting the user store in there, right? And then I'm going to kind of talk about who owns what data when, because I'm not sure that this is going to work exactly as I intend. But again, I'm experimenting here because I want to try and establish my patterns. If I can actually establish a working, usable set of stores and views, etc., in this screen, so I can add, I can view, I can do all these sorts of things inside of the screen, then I can expand that out to the greater application, and then that accelerates my application development going forward because I've got some solid patterns going in there. If I'm just making it up as I go along, right, and I just keep adding code and adding code and adding code to get something achieved, right? So let's say I'm like, okay, I can display planning items, good. Now let's move to initiatives, good. Let's add some users, let's do this, let's do that. And I just kind of blow through the application. What I'm going to end up with is a trail of technical debt and messy code behind me that is not as maintainable as I want it to be. So what I want to do is make sure that I'm at least getting some of these patterns down, especially in an area where I'm ultra weak, right? My client side stuff is just terrible. So I want to make sure that I'm going to get a set of patterns and practices I can follow to move through the rest of the application, and then that will accelerate my building of the application anyway, because I will have, oh yeah, I know how to do this, I can change this, I can do this, and it's a little bit more comfortable. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a user store, and I'm kind of organizing stores, planning items. Now states and models kind of live at that level anyway, because they're not specific to this thing, they are the general thing. So I kind of made them that way. So we're going to create users state.ts, and all this does, right, if I just import the planning items one just for temporary, right, we have a user. So we know that a user is an ID, name, and email. At maximum, an ID, name, and email. User. Right. So export interface user. That might come back to bite me, but we'll see. ID is a string. Name is a string, and email is a string. Right. Now over here, user state, we have users, which is an array of user. Remove that, and this is our users state. Now over in our store, we can do export const. I think it's, let's have a look. Export const, yeah. Users store equals signal store, right? And then with initial, with state, and then we're gonna copy that again here. This is users, and that's going to be users state, and that's going to be initial state. It's just so it's got something to work off of. You can modify that. That's the baseline to build with, right? I can do new index.ts in there. I can do export users state. I could do something there to make that. Yeah, I want to make that later, so I can just do. That's easy. That's cleaner then. But either way, that doesn't really make a difference to what I'm doing right this second. So let's move on. Oh, finally. So my prompter has not connected to Twitch all day. It just connected with Mulvey's first question. So yeah, it's still in Twitch chat. If you post something, I'd appreciate it. Actually, I can do it. No, no, still not working. You just got one message and that's it. Okay. It wouldn't connect from anything. Anything external. Twitch was seemingly having issues. It's not the prompter. Okay, so now let's talk about features. So I'm gonna break this down the same way because it kind of made sense to me. So I'm gonna create a features, and then we're gonna need a users query feature. And all this is doing is export function with users query equals how do I do it? It's an actual function, export function, and then it's a function, and it returns a signalStore feature. And this is a bundle of the behavior that represents this feature. So you can again create different stores with different features. And one of the things I want to experiment with is, okay, well, in the add planning item, I need just a simple planning store because I'll just need the add piece. So why do I need to pull everything in there? I don't know if there's cost or whether there's benefit necessarily to doing it that way. But from my perspective, it does make it kind of clean. The diagram was made in Xcode. This one? Sorry. It's xcalidraw.com. I just hosted a local version. That's why that's localhost 5000. Just why I always have the if for whatever reason, as long as I've got it local, it doesn't really matter. That's what it actually looks like. Okay, so yeah, I can compose those things. So return signalStore, and then this is going to be with methods, and I gotta read back up on this. Okay, so let me review what this is doing. We'll copy it in and then go back through it. So this injects my store, right? The store, it doesn't know what this store is at this point. We're going to need a service for our users. We'll get to that in a second. And then all we do is make a method called load_all, where we say, hey, patch the state, set the loading to true. Now go off and do this. And when it comes back, set the loading to false and set the result, the resulting users, right? That's cool. We're not going to do it that way because we're going to need a different service now. So let's create a new this is going to be called users.service.ts, and do that. I could use the I could use the scaffolding to do this, but that's way too easy. Back to the planning item service. So a few things I need here, right? I just need fetch all right this second, which is what I'm going to do. Public. How did I actually write that? Public fetch all function. Now, as I learned yesterday with GraphQL, I have a few different challenges here. So I have to create response, because what happens is when I go query users for tenant, users ID, name, email, etc., right? What actually comes back is an object that has a data object, which has a users object, which is an array, or users value, which is an array. So there's a data object with users as a property of it. So I'm going to have to create a users list response. Hold on. .ts. Being wildly inconsistent with how I'm doing this stuff. And all that's doing is okay, export interface, users list response, and that's going to be really annoying because it's almost exactly the same thing. Yeah, users, which is a array of user, and then did I really import that from there? Ooh. Ooh, that's not good. Hold on. Let's try something. Users, and then yeah, I don't like that. Oh, the prompt is catching up. It's now on Tailwind. Cool. That's funny. And loading Boolean. I don't need loading Boolean either way, so it's fine. Actually, let's look back at how I used it. Result.data.applying items. So what I do in here is I map this, right? So this is the query. So this is users for tenant or whatever. And that's now going to be users. That's going to be ID, name, and email, right? And this is going to be a users list response. And then result is of type unknown. So here I did, because result is, it should be an Apollo query result, that's why. We need a constructor. Oh, there it is. It's called private Apollo is an Apollo. Right, there we go, that's better. And that's users. Now, this is using a model created here. And it's not the model that I'm going to end up with, because the model that I'm talking about is here. So we're going to trust that that's going to work right now. So then I can maybe I can generalize that is where I'm going. Right. What time is it? Okay, we got 8:20. So then over here, we don't need that anymore. We need a users service. And that's going to be called users service. And now we need user service.fetch all. And this is going to change to be users is results. So Right now I have generality in that it's an any. But I think when I actually go to use it, it's going to be my state, which knows that it's going to be a bunch of users. So we're going to trust that it's because it's going to fit, right? Yeah, we'll have to see if we can generalize that afterwards because that would make that cleaner. And obviously these queries and stuff I'll move around later. But right now, building them into the services makes sense. So ultimately, all I'm achieving with doing this, by the way, is I'm actually just moving my service calls to another class and then injecting that class into my view. But it means that now my view doesn't have to worry about where it gets its data from, just that it's going to get its data. So if I change this out for a different API or I do something different with how I manipulate the data, the view is just the view. It doesn't really care about where it came from. So that's where I'm going here. So then I can do with users query, right? And that adds that feature into the user store, right? And now in our planning items view, what we're going to do is we're going to inject a store, read only users store equals inject user store. And we're going to do this dot user store load all. And in a view, we're going to do div users store dot users out to JSON. So now we should have a nice error. Okay. No provider for signalStore. No provider for signalStore. What do we miss? Inject. No provider for signalStore. Oh. There you go. As our users. And again, yeah, it has cast. That's interesting. It pulls down the actual type name from the server. It puts that into the object. So we now have a list of users, which is cool. And again, we can do in here, we could do user service, load that, fetch all, patch state. That's the challenge there. The order by is going to be interesting. So what you can do is you can do with computed, I believe. So let's have a look at that, the documentation standpoint. NGRX. By the way, for Angular and specifically the signalStore stuff, I would recommend going out to checking out XOCamille's stream. Jason is way more knowledgeable on the Angular. Like, just there's way more knowledge on Angular on all that. So I'm using his actual repositories to kind of refer to for some reference. I'm good at this language thing. It's awesome. But I'm using it for reference and inspiration on how to do some of these things and how they work because the Angular docs, the NGRX story docs are pretty good. I'm not doubting that. But actual usage, a little harder to fathom. So I go over to the overview here, right, and I go to signalStore. This gave me an overview of, here you can do these things, right? But yeah, it's not. Yeah, so here you go. This is what I'm looking for. So if I go back to my code and I do sorted users, sorted by name, right? I'm gonna pull this up onto the other screen so I don't keep flashing back and forth, because I know that's a thing I do frequently. I need to get better at. And for anyone joining the stream, if you have questions, thoughts, opinions, etc., on what I'm doing, you want to know more, you're always welcome to ask. Stream is not a, hey, watch me code. Computed. That's that. Computed is that. And then that's that. Circular race. So computed. Sorted books. Sorted. Oh, I need a bit more up here. So hold on. So this needs the state. Users. It's gonna be that. It's gonna be that. It's gonna be that. There you go. It's looking healthier. Well, I'll do. Let's find a doing good. Doing good. How about you? So that's Signals Factory. Is that my state? Do I inject state there? No. Users. That's not cold, tired, and cranky. Can't really complain. I say that can be a constant state in the winter there. I remember when I was in college. I was in college in Oldham, and some nights the buses ran weird, or if I was out of college late, and having to walk across the top of town down to the other bus stops, it was miserable because it was dark and it was rainy, and those are pretty much the most miserable times I've had in terms of British weather. Just standing waiting for buses. Generally I don't find it that bad, but when I think cold and tired, I think of that time. Okay, so I got to figure out what is this passing in. So the example passes in users or booked and filter, right? But that's a state. So I got to figure out what it is I'm meant to be doing. Accessing previously defined state and computed signals. But this doesn't know about state. So if I do with state, initial state, does that change anything? User state. I'm just trying to figure out if that goes and changes anything. That states, users state, export type. No, that doesn't. As users state. Yeah, that does change that, doesn't it? Interesting. What I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to I'm messing around really. I'm just trying to use this feature, this with compute, because again, I'm pulling the data in, but I'm not necessarily guaranteed that it's going to be in the right order. So what I'm doing is I am going to make a computed value or a computed function which I can call sorted by name, and it will return my state in a sorted manner. However, it looks like that needs the actual state defined. Because if I remove that, it loses all track of what this is, right? So that might not be something I can do in here, right? And again, the benefit here is I can do this in here, right? And now it knows about state, and now I've got the query. Because how I get this, I suppose that makes sense because it's not a component of query. This is a component of the actual store as a whole. It would just be nice to know. There's no generics here or anything like that, so I can't say, hey, it's this type of state. I don't think there's generics. Is there generics? Am I just going nuts there? I think I'm going. I think that's not actually a thing. It's definitely not a thing in the examples, but so I'm not gonna I'm not gonna chase that one too far. But here we go. Why is this signals factory? That's not what I want. Just the sheer signature, the method signature stuff in TypeScript or rather in JavaScript or whatever, whichever way you're gonna look at it is, it's just so confusing to me. If I do that, right, what am I actually looking at there? So what that looks like is that's telling me that that is a type of, or maybe it's not, maybe it's, let's make this return something and see if it fixes it. Return, this would return, right, so users dot so it's a signal, so sort, and then we give it f dot name greater than we need ab, right? A dot name greater than b dot name. No, we don't do it that way. When my brain is corrupted by. But that's not. That's not a thing. So you're just making that up. I'm reading the documentation, right? And books count, books length, that's fine. Books to sorted. Yeah, they're just making that up. That's not a real thing. That's not even in the code. If I copied the code, so just for reference, if I copied that code, right? This to sorted, this locale compare, right? As far as I know, anything like this is going to end up with a method up here. So I'm going to restart. That's bugging me. It's sending messages in after about 5 minutes. So I'm going to restart the prompter software and see. So the camera may go off shortly. Not that anyone's really going to be. Channel TBD gamer not found. Well, that's news to me. Camera hub. Quit camera hub. Okay. Okay, that's that. Then let's quit Castle Labs and restart it. It's just severely behind on the chat. It's bugging me because I see it flicker and then it distracts me. So, but anyway. That's a new way to have imposter syndrome. I don't exist. One line, good morning as well. I found it though. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Come on. Just when you think you've got all the technology together and things are just working nicely, things just refuse to work. Widgets and alerts, docs, settings, accounts. Yeah, Twitch is just not connecting at all. It's just done. So neither the prompter nor my Caster Labs plugin will display Twitch chat right now. And I'm not restarting the computer for the benefit of that. So anyway, too sorted. Too sorted is not a method. It is not an extension. It is not a default behavior of this. So I don't know where too sorted comes from, which is confusing me. Whether that's something they just made up. But either way, if you were to copy this code and paste it in, would it work? I don't know. Is this causing me a problem? I don't know. Seems to exist in an array. Okay, so have I got a language level difference here? Have I got like is it the structure? So I do know that it's temperamental based upon what I'm doing, right? So this is an array, this is a signal, so that gets it out the signal and gives me back users, right? It's a function that returns users. So this should give me an array. Yeah. I think this is causing me a problem somewhere. I think so. This, as far as I understand it, is meant to be giving me the state, and I think I'm making a problem. So I think this is part one of my problem, right? So let's get that fixed first, and then we can worry about. Because at first I thought this was causing the problem, right? But that now returns something. So unnecessary label. So the structure of, let's have a look. This is a me problem. I'm now at this point very certain. Okay, so let's copy in that. I think I can recreate that. So, okay, so if that's users and that doesn't exist, right? And then we do users.length there. We don't need that. We just do users. Hmm. But I practically had that parens. That's what was missing. Sorted users. I'm only doing this to learn. I could have moved on from this. I've got the list of data. I'm just trying to do something extra. Okay. Why is to sorted not available? WebStorm. I mean, it's not like it's new. The two sorted method of array is the copying version of the sort method. It returns a new array with the elements sorted in ascending order. You might be compiling to a TS version that doesn't have it. Oh, and I just want to drop down in my screen. ES 2022 DOM. ES next async iterable. Iterable, how do you pronounce that? So ES 2022. you are okay. What am I gonna have to do here? I'm gonna have to do something, aren't I? String violates the pattern. What? Oh, there is no ES 2023 module. ES 2023 dot array in lib. So it's a newer spec. Ah. Now if I include that, oh, that's two sorted. Nice. Name. Argument for target option must be. So it doesn't like that. Doesn't like that. Thank you very much for the assistance there. That is Okay, so what did we learn there? Team. Um, what did I actually learn there? Um, where would I have known to do that? So I'm I'm checking out. Programming is hard. Compiling is harder. I'm checking out. This is a new Angular 17 app created a week ago, right? So where did I know to sorted comes from, right? Um, hmm. and that's the challenge with copying examples, right? Honestly, I'd have probably just gone to sort, right? Um, so the things I was missing that. So I was missing one more parens, and obviously I was missing that. So there we go. But now over here in our uh, in our view, right? I should be able to do. How do I use a computed column? I'm sure it's going to show me really quickly where to use that computed, right? Couldn't possibly be confusing. Sorted. Okay, so I can just use it like that. So I can do sorted users. Now when I go back over here, my users are not loaded at all. That's definitely helpful. Um, oh, no. I'm doing that wrong. I still need to load all, right? I still need to load the state, right? What I need to do is this becomes sorted users. I immediately just Googled with an example that showed toSorted was a method on arrays. So I asked if it is built in JS function, which showed me the MD dots for it. Then I asked about why it wasn't working in TypeScript, which took me to Stack Overflow and showed that it required ES2023 array. Nice. Yeah. And that's one of those examples of, I've seen a few times in your Discord, like some of the members being like, well, Google is cheating, or I feel like I'm a fraud if I'm using Google, that sort of stuff. Knowing how to use Google is just one part of the skill set, right? Well, people do believe it. Like you know, that imposter syndrome is made worse, especially if you believe that. Why you believe that part of being a good programmer is being able to know it all, right? If you're taught that, or people make you think that way, then that's the way you're gonna go. There we go. Okay, so Deflux, Helen, and Matthew. Yep. Thank you for saying it out loud. I typed and retyped what you said about 8 times. Yeah, it's not like I don't know if you guys have specifically heard it, but I went for an interview with a very large company once, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do a programming test, right? And so at the time of the test, it was a remote interview. I'm a fraud, Copilot all the way. Understand people feel that way, but that's not healthy. Yeah. So, um, at the time of the interview, they called me, right? And what they did is they installed the client that I used to do the interview. They installed it, and what it did was it focused my screen 100%. Like I could not leave that window to do the test. I wasn't allowed to Google anything, whatever. And they're like, okay, now write this algorithm, right? Um, Given some constraints, write this algorithm, right? And I muddled through, and I think I got it done in the end. I can't remember, but they didn't pick me because I struggled through whatever, and then they asked for feedback. At which point I told them that interview is absolute BS, without mincing my words. I was like, there is no developer on this planet right now who is of any talent that is going to be able to recall everything in their arsenal in one go. The ability of a developer is not to know everything. The experience that you gain along the way teaches you how to more effectively go and look for the answer when you haven't touched something for 6 months, right? Everything we do as human beings, if we do not use it, our brains let that skill set disappear slightly so that we don't have to have everything in our heads at once. Yes, there are some people that are extremely talented and can remember a lot and can do a lot. But if you're not doing something every day, you just don't keep that current. So the ability for any developer, experience is just the amount of the things you've done in the past to jog your memory in the future, right? So I told him that. And then just before I moved on from that, I actually got another job. And just the week before I got it, they actually reached out to me. Now this is like 4 months afterwards, and said, "Hey, do you still want a job?" Like, no, I'm good, thanks. But again, it's more, you shouldn't be afraid if you don't know everything, right? And that's, I think that held me back for a long time, feeling that, especially once I got to the point where all of a sudden I wasn't the junior developer anymore, I was the senior developer, and people looking to me for answers. I'm like, oh dear, I gotta be very honest, I don't know that, right? I've got to learn that, right? I would still argue this requires skill to know what the code you're getting is what you want. I would agree with that. Would recommend not using AI until you have a few projects under your belt. Yeah, AI for coding, you have to understand what it's giving you, or at least understand what you need to go and understand. That sounds like the most toxic interview. I had an interview like that one. Sometime someone asked me how to do a very specific swapping method that required you to know a very specific trick in mathematics. They refused to accept my answer of, there is information here that I do not know and would need to research and look at before I can effectively answer this. Turns out integers have a very specific property through addition and subtraction that would allow you to swap their values in a variable. Yeah, it's unrealistic to expect that. So anyway, we do have this. So let's remove our user store. We don't need it in the screen, right? Right this second. So I'm not going to get to where I wanted to on stream today, but that's okay. We're going to be okay. But I might be able to get this point. So read only user store equals inject user store. So this does get me to some of the questions I have. Oh, this is a standalone component. That's why that works. If this wasn't standalone, I have to include the module thing. But this is an actual component that's outside of the module, so that I could actually add a planning item from anywhere else, right? So I can add this slide out anywhere in the application now, and it will come in. But it's in my planning module, so that doesn't fit. I'll worry about that later. That's a design challenge for later. Edgy on init. User store dot load all. Right, so we're going to load the users in. I tried to see interviews like that from a different angle. They're testing a few things. What are your problem-solving skills when you're faced with a programming task? What is your mental process when thinking through a problem? Are you comfortable asking questions when you don't know? Do you know when you don't know, or to try to peek out? How do you process and apply new information? Right. In my situation, I was not allowed to ask questions. I had to just figure it out. They actually was recording my screen and went away. So there was no collaboration aspect of it, right? Which I think is another good thing to test. And so from my perspective, if I'm interviewing someone, what I care about is, can I sit down with you and have a conversation about software, right? Can I ask you questions and can you relay answers back to me? A lot of technical interviewers want you to solve their question in a very specific way. Right. So for me, what I will do if I have choice over my hiring practice, what I'll do is I'll come up with a sample project, like, oh, we need to add this, we need to kind of register vehicles coming through a gateway, or we need to, track certain information about users or whatever. And I'll give a general project. And then I'll send you that before the interview, right? There's no cheating on that, right? Because you can go and write the code. You can, and the direction is go and write the code, and whatever you feel you need to write for this to make sure that it's following the rules, right? And then when they come in for the interview, they've sent that beforehand, so I've been able to review it, and I sit down and I talk through it, right? Have you thought about unit testing? How does this apply, right? Why didn't you do unit testing on this? Or, what other patterns could you use here, or things like that? And it's, can you talk to me about software, and can we have an intelligent and friendly conversation where we might have different different skills and different things like that? So I kind of like that style. Maybe that's because of my background, because I've not had that education, and I'm a generalist in overall. I don't interview well if you're asking me a bunch of technical aspects, right? But if you get me to show you, if I can prove to you I can code, then I'm better. So I like to give everyone that chance, because I think a lot of people can talk the talk and can't walk the walk. And a lot of people can walk the walk but can't talk the talk, right? So I feel that giving someone that chance to say, hey, here's what I can do, and then also how do you discuss it, it matters. And that's what matters anyway. If you're developing software with a team, how you discuss those things and how you relay information is a big component of how you produce code. It's not just about writing code at the end of the day, right? I do like the multi-round interview process where each interview session is focused on different aspects, behavioral, technical, and fit within the team. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway. Okay, so let's try and get this last piece in here for today, just so you can see my vision. Div label 4, planning item, assign user, class SR only. That's just a screen reader. Assigned user input. Oh no, we need a multi-round is weird. Every company I've hired for recently, I've had a minimum of 3 rounds. Well, no, recently. I interviewed for my current company over a year ago, and the company before that 8 years previously. But I had many rounds with different people. If you aren't the strongest in one of them, there will be more context, and the interview has a chance to get more comfortable with the interviewer. Unfortunately, I just think that the entire interview process is broken. I just don't know how to improve it. When it's work for yourself, that is one way, right? We need a select list here. Components, selects. Yeah, I apologize to anyone behind ads if you're not Twitch Turbo user. The only one I had multiple rounds in was Google one, which I bombed the technical rounds so hard for the same reasons Apex pointed out. All the rest were kind of a meet and greet, quickly followed by, do you want the job? But argue interviews are flawed, and that's why we have probationary periods. But I don't want to get a job and get landed in a probationary period and then get let go, right? The probationary period should not be a trial. The probationary period is really, did you manage to hide a lot of things in that interview process. So the more rigorous right, but again, that's why more rigorous interview processes come around, right? Because people don't want to waste that time because it still costs them, right? If they hire someone, you're still paying them for that amount of time. You're still onboarding them, um, even if you've not signed all the paperwork and made things like health insurance and stuff happen. There's still a significant cost to bringing someone into a building or into an organization. So if you can root that out, then that's fine. Like again, for me, every person that I've interviewed has flaws, right? Um, you know, some of those flaws don't show in that first 3 months either. Some of them show when pressure hits or when app simple select. Now, how do I do this? I want to get this one piece done before we call it the day. I don't know. I don't know what the right way to do an interview is overall, but ultimately, I care whether I can actually work with someone on code, on discussion, whether they're okay, so do it. Modules, planning, views, forms, and okay, here. So the item is users store dot sorted users form control. We'll worry about that in a second. Find user, select user. We're gonna need to put a unselect option in there. How did I do that in that other form? Oh, I don't have a screen reader label. That's going to be a challenge. We're gonna have to deal with that later. I got really close to fully moving to working for myself, but I was standing off to go back to the place I used to work. It's kind of hard to turn down. I'm trying to get them to contract me through my company, but there really wouldn't be much different if I went W2 versus if they went 1099. They're really good people. I haven't too much again. Bad to work with me. No worries, Landline. I appreciate it. I appreciate this sort of discussion, right? It's good to have different experiences from people who are, experienced or more time in role and less time, and then we can kind of compare and hopefully make others that are making their way feel better. I think my hang up is, does 3 to 6 interviews show you those answers? And even if you make it past, you still have a 3-month period where they can let go anyways. 3 to 6. I mean, I think I've done 4 in the past 2 jobs. They've not felt too arduous. And this last job, I didn't even do a technical interview because I wasn't interviewing for a technical role, which is hilarious considering what I'm doing. But yeah, well, my current role, I'm not meant to be a developer, right? I'm a developer because I can develop, not because I was hired for a developer role. I was hired as a more solutions person. We need that. We need that thing in there. Okay, so we need assigned user. So this is going to be public. I've got to finish this, but it's bugging me. Form control equals new form control, and this is going to be a string because it's going to be the actual user ID. And your solution must use PHP. Troll. This is not valid, and that's not required. A required control, so we don't need that. And we're going to come back around on the plan. This is going to need to change again afterwards because we're going to have to add a signed user. Those pieces go away. I was testing with signed user. So that's the form control. So opening tag. Oh, not selected. Hey, Unicus, how are you doing? No provider. Okay, so that is because no provider. That is because I probably need to make this not standalone, part of the module. No, I must do providers user store. I don't think I can work. Oh, I can. When I go here now, there you go. There's my users. Not perfect, but we have a user. So some changes to come, but that's the purpose, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is when I've got a form like this and I'm doing an add planning item, right? What information do I store in the planning item store about the user? Because when I display that information, I'm going to have, right? When I get planning items, I'm going to have to do assign user name at the very least, right? Cannot return null for non-nullable field, right? So how do I do is there a nullable syntax in GraphQL, right? So what do I do there? So these are the other questions I have, like who owns what data when, and you know, in the store, right? But overall, we are making progress, which is good. And that's going to bug me. So why? Class. So I got to put some padding on because that's all being done there. Padding Y 1.5. With full block. Don't mind me while I mess around with Tailwind, because the UI does bug me at times. So anyway, so the next step is to get that user selection into the actual planning item form. So that's gonna move that and allow me to assign the user. So this is this field, and now we kind of get into the concept of, okay, well, what does this mean? Because obviously now we've just got a name. So it changes the way this form works as well, right? The form doesn't lay out as cleanly now. But this is who the actual thing's assigned to. So when I select, if I select Helen on this list, then that planning item won't appear when I'm deflux, right? So I need to introduce those filters. I need to do all those pieces. But then again, I'm trying to here work out. No. Appreciate you stopping by, Junicus. Your odd working hours. So we've created a second store, which is nice. We are able to pull the data. We're able to sort the data. So we've introduced some computed fields to the store now. We are able to select that. We kind of talked about the pattern. We learned. Yes, I do work today, so I do have to finish up very shortly. I just kind of wanted to get to this point where I could show this drop down on the screen. So we've created a second store. We have users. This is all working nice and cleanly. We got so yesterday with the planning items, I kind of rearranged some things, but that's what the planning item store looks like now. and I broke out the two features. So query and write are separate features. So their behaviors are all neatly wrapped up there. Today with the user store, so I did the same thing with the query here, right? So we introduced this GraphQL piece for querying the users for the tenant. And then we introduced a computed column or computed property signal that was sorted users. So it will actually return a sorted list. Very soon you'll need to really start using components. Just stuff is starting to get unwieldy with Tailwind CSS. Yeah, you have to try and learn a little bit more there. But that's kind of the purpose of doing it this way, right? I'm sticking to this one screen. I'm building out. I'm building out the way this screen works because there is a form to add. There will be a view of the actual thing. There will be different perspectives of this data. So it's allowing me to test the query side. It's allowing me to test the insert side. So once I've got this screen in a good enough place where I understand the components and stuff, then I think we'll move forward to other features. But I think this is worthwhile doing. I don't think there's any benefit in just running forward and trying to get more items in at this point, considering how this feels. I think I'm learning a lot more doing it this way than I am if I just bundle through and try and get extra features in the application stack. I think everything will go faster from there on. So I didn't turn that light on today, so I look really washed out on there because I've just got the bright white and the color change from that. That's awesome. How I stream. Yeah. We can talk about those things, right? We can clean those things up. But yeah, that is going to be it for today for me. I will be back tomorrow for another stream like this. Hopefully I can get some more stuff done. The rest of my day today. Will not hold out hope for that though, because it's a busy day. Who are we going to raid over to? Thank you, online. Appreciate it. Thank you, Apex. Oh, thank you. I really do appreciate you guys coming and hanging out and talking and contributing, and you know, this is why streaming is very addictive, right? When you start to get, for me at least, it's meeting other professionals that care about what they're doing. And I think, Twitch, if you're going looking for programming streams and you're sitting in, especially my stream, if you're sitting in my stream watching this stuff, then you care about what you're doing, because there's no way, there's plenty more entertaining places to be if you're looking for entertainment. But it's I have no one to raid. It does good old programming if you're still looking. Yeah, I think Nikki's in my list. I was looking. I try and find app dev, because if there's app developers out there streaming, the only one I know of, who raided me a while ago that I followed, but his stream is primarily in Spanish, so I can't understand it. And although a few of you would be okay with that, I don't know if the majority would be. So, I'm going to let's raid Nikki. Nikki is cool as well. I have been in Nikki's stream before. We're going to raid over there. I'll be back tomorrow, and Friday's stream will be a bit longer as well. I have the day off work again on Friday. So he is hoping to. Yeah, I don't like raiding the Visual Studio channel. It's not. Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't like raiding the big channels, and he's also doing learn C sharp. So the viewers are in there that not necessarily the viewers that are going to find my stream very useful anyway. So yeah. um yeah. But anyway, thank you for joining me. I will hopefully see you all again tomorrow, or around Twitch today. Take care all. Have a good one.